Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa. Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama, right here in downtown Northport. You're watching the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral. We're live on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. You can hear us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. And we are one day away. Oh, you made it. You're almost there. Get through the rest of this workday, and it will be game day here in Tuscaloosa. You wouldn't know that tomorrow's game day in Tuscaloosa. This pretty much it looks like it's today. The traffic has been absolutely absurd already. The Longhorns fans have descended onto Tuscaloosa, so we are excited to host Texas, to host you guys, and really make it a huge weekend right here at BamaCentral.com. You can follow the program, like I said, at Joe Gaither6 on all the social media machines. Send us your comments, questions, queries, and complaints. And of course, you want to follow Bama Central as we will be covering all things Crimson Tide right here as Alabama kicks off. We got College Game Day kicking off tomorrow, 8 a.m. I hope to see you guys right there, Brian Denny, right there, Denny Chimes. That's going to be the location for College Game Day. And we had a little news that Joe Namath is going to be our celebrity guest picker. So maybe we'll see Joe Namath out there, and we'll hope to see you out on the quad. What are we going to do on today's program? Well, we're going to go back behind enemy lines, and we're going to welcome in Joey Hickey of Longhornswire. Joey Hickey, you can follow him on the social media machines at jhickey24. He writes for Longhornswire, and he's going to tell us how and why the Texas Longhorns can beat Alabama. Joey, thanks so much for joining us today. I hope you're having a great day. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Absolutely. Well, you write for Longhornswire, and so you've been covering the Texas Longhorns for a hot minute now. And so, really, I've been all over the Alabama side right here on our show, and we've been all over to the Nick Saban press conferences a couple of times this week. I really haven't heard anything from Sarkisian, but that's just because I haven't looked at it. I want to open up our conversation right here, and you can let the Alabama fans know what has been kind of the messaging behind Steve Sarkisian this week. What has he been saying to the media? Have any players said anything interesting? What has Steve Sarkisian really said about this weekend's matchup with Alabama?
Well, yeah, it's a tremendous opportunity, and I think that he's really nailed down on that. Obviously, you face the king of the last 15 years in college football and really of all time. I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, 17, how many national champions? 19? I'm not sure how many they got. 18?
Depends on how many they claim, how many we claim.
True.
I think the current claim is at 18, but if you look online, they probably say it's around 9 or 10 official.
Yeah, I mean, still, it's several national championships. And for Sarkisian, it's all about bouncing back from last week, showing a better product than last week. Texas really struggled against Rice, and they need to get that righted. So that's been the message this week.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. I watched the Rice game, and we heard from Kirk Bohls earlier in the week. We heard from Kirk Bohls on Tuesday from Austin American Statesman, and really the Rice game, didn't look so great in a couple of areas. It looked real good on some areas. The defense looked really, really impressive throughout the entire game, and they looked like a very focused unit. But the offense looked a little bit out of sorts per se. Some chunk runs, not very consistent on the ground, and struggled protecting Quinn Ewers. Do you think that maybe possibly some of those problems that we saw against Rice were due to, oh gosh, we're looking ahead to Alabama, or are some of these problems symptomatic of what's going on in the Texas program?
I think you could say it's a little bit of both. I mean, obviously you lose Bijan Robinson, and that's going to be a big hit. But obviously Steve Sarkisian has even mentioned, they've spent the last month preparing for Alabama. So it's been all Alabama. And, we'll show up for Rice. We want to play a good game, but that's not our primary concern. And he may not spell it out that way, but that's kind of how they've kind of approached it.
Well, I've heard from Kirk Herbstreit this past week, and we heard it was Joe Klatt on the call, wasn't it? I think it was Joe Klatt on the call for the Texas and Rice game. And in the middle of the game, the announcer turned and asked him, "Oh, do you think they might be holding anything back?" And Joe Klatt said, "No, no, no, that's not an issue." And so Kirk Herbstreit said the same sort of thing this week, that there's no such thing as holding back plays or holding back concepts. Do you believe that? Do you think Texas might have just kind of said, "Oh, it's Rice, we can beat Rice because we're more talented than them," and Texas is easily, or do you think that Steve Sarkisian might have held some things in his pocket for this coming up week?
Well, I think you guys are familiar with Steve Sarkisian, and you guys know he loves the first half script and getting ahead real early, getting fast starts. Texas really didn't have that. There wasn't a whole lot of creativity, and I think if you've seen a good Steve Sarkisian script, he's going to score fast. He's going to put points on the board. He did it against OU both times that he's faced them. So if there's a big game, Steve Sarkisian is going to have all the bells and whistles out. It's going to be a tremendous first half game plan, and we didn't have that.
You're absolutely right. And Alabama fans who can remember last year's game, Texas went straight down the field in the first drive, kicked a field goal, and then went straight down the field on the second drive, and that's where Quinn Ewers got hurt. And really, as Texas is flying down the field, the Alabama social medias are, "Oh my gosh, Nick Saban, Sarkisian's got his number. He's gonna go 1,000 yards today." And then obviously Quinn Ewers gets hurt, and that changes things. Sarkisian had to adjust a little bit. Do you think that maybe, even if Quinn Ewers stays in the game last year, do you think that you still see the Alabama defense maybe climb back into the game? Or do you think that really Sarkisian would have kept it rolling with his game plan with Quinn Ewers under center?
Well, when Sarkisian has the talent that Alabama had when he was the offensive coordinator, you can keep scoring all game. But at Texas, it's been an issue of what happens after the first quarter. And it's been several times where Texas scores a lot in the first quarter and then lags off. And so I feel like that probably would have happened last season. I don't know what degree it would happen to, but it's definitely been an issue where once the script is over, what do you do? When they adjust, what do you do?
What do you think we'll see this week? Because obviously you had a little struggle on offense with Rice. Alabama's defense looked good in the first week, but really we're kind of dealing with similarities along the offensive line. Coach Saban came out on his radio show tonight and basically said, "Oh, we need to expect a street fight against Texas, and really we need to expect a 60-minute battle." I think a lot of Alabama fans are kind of really expecting, "Oh, y'all didn't beat Rice very much. Everything's going to be fine. We're going to roll right over you." I don't know too much. I don't think they're quite right on that. What's kind of your early? Well, it's not early anymore. Your almost game time expectations for tomorrow night.
Yeah, so Alabama obviously should dominate Texas offensive line. Just looking at how both teams performed last week, how the game went the last time, I think Alabama's defensive line is going to own Texas. But I also think that Texas is going to have a lot of success against the Alabama defensive line. Particularly, you have Tavondre Sweat, who is a one-man wrecking crew, 362 pounds, just an absolute beast. And I think he's going to have a strong game. And then you have two other strong defensive tackles who can bring pressure. So it could be a defensive battle.
So we're talking to Joey Hickey of Longhornswire, and you can follow him at jhickey24 on Twitter machine or X, whatever you want to call it these days. Let's put you, Joey Hickey, you're in charge of the Texas game plan. What does Texas need to do to win, to come into Tuscaloosa and win?
You got to scheme up a pocket for Quinn Ewers. I mean, that offensive line was absolutely horrible against Rice. I think a lot of it was they kind of walked into the first half, got it right in the second half. But you got to have some sort of pocket for Ewers to throw because, I mean, he's not a quarterback who can throw under duress. He's at least downfield throws. And so you got to find a way to score early, build an early lead, and then hope that defense can hold through for you.
Coach Saban talking tonight on Hey Coach, basically saying that the Texas defense does bring pressure, but not in a traditional sense, not overly blitzing. Really, he was talking about matchups with the inside linebackers, and when somebody, he said, "Oh, one of the inside linebackers matches with the back, and the other one basically just blitzes whenever." How do you expect You got Jalen Milroe, a new Alabama quarterback, and people saw him last week. He hit a lot of first reads and played pretty well, but obviously MTSU not as talented as Texas will be. How do you expect Texas and Pete Kwiatkowski to go after? Do you think that they'll stay kind of in their traditional, we have a lot of talent, we're going to play straight up? Or do you think that they're going to bring a lot of exotic blitzes and stunts and kind of get after Jalen Milroe?
Well, you have to watch him in the running game because he's going to take off. And when he takes off, he can go for 50 yards at any point in the game. So you got to bring pressure up the middle. I think when he has success, it's when the pressure is coming from the outside, he can step up and take off. If you bring pressure up the middle, I think that's where Texas could have success. And then obviously you got to run zone. If you got your back to Jalen Milroe, that is not a winning formula.
Is there any saltiness to the Texas fan base due to Jalen Milroe being an original Texas commit? He was committed to Texas, then flips to Alabama after Drake May flips from Alabama to North Carolina. Is there any sort of saltiness in the Texas fan base due to that?
I think everybody just loves him. I mean, you understand why he left. There was preferential treatment to Ewers. They're going to build around Ewers. And he just wanted an opportunity. And he got it at Alabama. And I don't think anyone blames him for that.
What's your opinion of Quinn Ewers? He cuts off the mullet. He already kind of hit. He struggled throwing downfield. In last year's Alabama game, he did well throwing downfield, but really he's showing signs of struggling down the field. Does he have the mental makeup to say, okay, I'm going to hang in there, let's move the pocket, or I'm going to be maneuvering around? Does he have the mental makeup to come into Tuscaloosa? And really, what's your opinion of him as a quarterback and as a player?
Well, yeah, absolutely. His issues with throwing the deep ball, I think, have a lot to do with the sidearm delivery. You throw sidearm, it's hard to throw it over the shoulder, and that's a lot of what Steve Sarkisian likes to do. Well, with Ewers, you have to get that angle to where you can kind of throw it on a straight line. He has the arm. I mean, he can throw it 70, 80 yards, but it's a matter of, can you get the right angle for him? I think if Texas can find a way to do that, he'll deliver those deep shots. But he's not going to be a precise deep ball thrower. I think, obviously, the mental makeup is an issue at this point. He was a lot more confident heading into the Alabama game last year than he looks like right now. And a lot of that is just, a whole year of struggles. And so now he's got to kind of get over that. But he looked like he's finally starting to get back to that confident Quinn, even though he wasn't making all the throws.
Is there any chance, and this is just ignorance for speaking, is there any chance that Quinn Ewers doesn't finish the game due to Sarkisian benching him? Obviously, injury, I know, and I don't hope for any injury, but is there any chance that we see Malik Murphy due to, we need to change it up? Quinn's really struggling, and we're going to throw Malik Murphy out there.
I mean, I wouldn't rule anything out. If Quinn Ewers is the reason why Texas is losing, if it's a close game and he's the reason and you have a chance, I could see them throwing Malik Murphy out there and seeing what he can do. I mean, Malik has a strong arm, very accurate, very smart, good at processing defenses. So it's not like Texas doesn't have options, but Sarkisian doesn't like to flip-flop with quarterbacks. You saw last year, he stuck with Quinn through a lot of tough battles. So I think he's probably going to stick with Ewers unless it's Quinn's losing us this game.
We're talking to Joey Hickey of Longhornswire. Go out and read him at longhornswire.usatoday.com. You can follow him on Twitter at jhickey24. Let me ask a bigger picture question. We're finishing a home-and-home series with Texas, and really all the fans that I had talked to about going out to Austin, I didn't make it out to Austin, said that largely it was a good experience. Yes, the Texas fans were, in your face, horns up, but it was largely a positive experience. And I think that we hope that here in Alabama, we hope to return the favor. Obviously, Texas and Oklahoma is a huge rivalry. Alabama and Auburn is a huge rivalry, but Texas is coming into the conference. And really, you've got kind of this blue blood feel with Alabama, with Texas. Not so. Maybe Georgia would argue for that, but I wouldn't quite put them there. As far as college football royalty, what do you think this home and home series means for the two schools, and what do you think it means for the conference, the SEC, going forward? And welcome to the conference yourself. What do you think it will mean to the conference? Will there be any sort of drop off an intrigue with Texas, Oklahoma, or Alabama and Auburn in favor of Texas and Alabama?
I think those new rivalries are going to create intrigue, obviously, and it's going to draw national audiences like crazy, I'm sure. Obviously, Red River is going to have that importance, but you face Texas facing Alabama. LSU feels like a big-time rivalry in the making, just state border rivals. I really think that could be a great rivalry, and there's several other SEC schools that are really strong that I think Texas fans could really get excited about. So it's going to be interesting.
Joey, what's your opinion of A&M?
That's a
Honest
loaded
opinion.
question.
Yeah, no, take the filter off. Honest opinion.
Ooh, I was not expecting that one. I think they are super talented, and I don't fault them for, how they get their recruits. I think that's just being committed to winning in college football. And so when they go out and use NIL to get recruits, it's something that I respect because I want my team to do that too. But, moving from Jimbo Fisher's offense to Bobby Petrino, now they look a lot better with that talent. I think they could be tough this year.
Well, really, I was more so because when Texas A&M came to the conference, there was like, oh, we're leaving Texas. We're getting out from underneath their shadow, and now we're big dogs. And they've had a couple signature wins, but obviously not won the SEC. They beat Alabama twice. Once out there and once here. And so they feel pretty big for their britches. But now Texas is coming back to the conference. Will they go back to little brother status?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, the recruiting bump from going to the SEC, that is the only thing that they had over Texas. And now you lose that. Now Texas has the SEC brand to go with its recruiting. I don't know how they will have any success against Texas.
Well, I do always remember what Thanksgiving night or Thanksgiving weekend, you had the Texas and A&M game. Just it would always take over my television, and you really could feel the passion through the TV screen. I'm looking forward to having that game back on the schedule.
100%.
So you hit Bijan Robinson earlier in the conversation, right at the beginning. You lost Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson to the NFL, and Bijan had a fine game when he rushed for like 70 yards against Alabama last time. He got into the end zone. How will Texas run the football? I mean, because really, Sarkisian wants to stay balanced. He wants to, keep Alabama off balance on defense, and to do that, you've got to run effectively. Do you have the horses in the stable to stay balanced in the Texas backfield?
They're going to have to set up the run with the pass. I mean, look, Texas has maybe the second best receiving group in the nation with Jatavian Sanders, Xavier Worthy. Y'all might be familiar with Adonai Mitchell from Georgia, just loaded with receivers. They got three more that are really good. You got to set it up with the pass because, look, Jonathan Brooks is a solid running back, not great. Cedric Baxter, he's a freshman. He's a 5-star, but he's a freshman. And he had some trouble blocking, and that could come back to bite you. So they got to set it up with a pass.
Well, that was really our issue last week was Alabama's offensive line played well. We gave up 3 sacks, and 2 of them were off running back blocks. Running back stepped up in the hole to block and got blown up. And so Jalen Milroe got sacked. I think it was 3 times, 2 or 3 times, but 2 of them were clearly on the running backs trying to step up and block and just getting destroyed. We talk about Coach Saban's been very complimentary already of the 2 interior defensive linemen. You already hit one of them. He said these guys are going to basically be the best interior linemen on our schedule this week. Well, who else on the Texas defense is really going to stand out and create havoc for the Alabama offense?
Yeah, Jalen Catalon. You might be familiar with that name too. That is a safety who has the widest range that any Texas safety I've ever seen has had. Very fortunate to get him from Arkansas, was an all-SEC player at safety. And then Jalen Ford, all-American linebacker, just a tremendous player. I feel like his one bad play last year came against Alabama. That one long run by Jace McClellan, he just took off. Part of that was the box was too light, and they had Ford manning everything between the tackles. But that's the one thing you could point to and say that's a tough play for Milroe. So, I mean, for Ford. So, yeah, those two players would be the big time players to watch.
We've been getting ready for the Texas game all week long, and one of the stories that we followed is Greg Byrne reciprocating the favor to the Texas fans and the Texas band, sending them up into the upper deck. Now, sitting up there many times, it's a beautiful view. It's a beautiful view, and it's no problem. You'll see the whole field. But what's your opinion, or what's been the Texas reaction? I mean, obviously, that was kind of set as a precedent last season. But what has been the Texas reaction now that that news was made official, on Tuesday, and then kind of confirmed and reconfirmed throughout the rest of the week? How have the Texas fans received that news that, we're all sitting upstairs?
I think it's the right move. I think it's the right move. Baylor, TCU, everybody in the Big 12 does it to us. And so that's kind of what we do with everybody else. And so, that's just business status quo. But I think in the SEC, obviously that'll change. But I think it's the right move for Alabama.
It a little surprised me, Joey, because I thought, look, there was a ton of moaning and crying in Tuscaloosa last year. There was a ton of it. Oh, I can't believe they treat us this way. And if you just did some research, as you just said, that's per tradition. The Texas fans, or the Texas stadium has always put them up there, and I think that's fine. And so when I kind of was thinking about it, I was like, well, our tradition has been to, split them in the northwest corner, some in the bottom, some in the top. And, and it's just kind of an even split right there. And so I thought, we'll just do the same. Logistically speaking, the Texas band will be in the bottom. They'll have, 500-700 people around that band. And they'll have, 1,500 people up top. No problem. And so when Greg Byrne kind of said, no, we're changing our precedent to pay them back, I was a little surprised. I thought, oh, come on, Greg. That was a chance to take the higher road. But I think it just adds more intrigue and more spice. Do you think, or do you know, is Texas considered where they're going to put the visitors when they come to the SEC? Because you're going to have to move some of your ticket holders up to the top to make room for that SEC policy.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything on where they'll put everybody. I mean, but obviously, I feel like Alabama's duty is to their fans, and Texas' duty is to their fans, and so you put your fans where you want them to be, and I have no problem with Texas being up in the rafters. That's just where they belong.
In this instance, you're probably right. I was just surprised that we'd break precedent a little bit. But honestly, Joey, we haven't had a huge non-conference game in Tuscaloosa since 2010. We hosted Penn State when Joe Paterno was still here. And then in 2003 or 4, you hosted Oklahoma. All the other non-conference games at home have been Middle Tech, University State, community college for the school and blind. And so this is really an exciting time. We haven't had a huge non-conference game since 2010. So 13 years, the town is already buzzing. What's been the excitement level in Austin? What's been the excitement level in Texas to come to Tuscaloosa and see what happens?
There's a ton of excitement, a ton of intrigue. Everybody wants to go to that game. Everybody in Austin wants to be there. Anytime you have a battle of blue bloods, it's going to draw quite a crowd. I think for me, it's intimidation because we saw how Arkansas got up for that 2021 game, and I think it just shell-shocked Texas. So going into Alabama, how they react is going to be a big thing to watch.
How do you expect the team to react? I mean, y'all don't play in small venues. You go, Red River is split in half, true, but every other school in Texas, TCU, Baylor, Texas Tech, they want to get a piece of Texas. How do you think they will react going into a hostile environment?
I think it all depends on how fast they start. They have to start fast. Offensively, I think defensively, this team is super resilient, super composed. They can deal with, adversity. I mean, the first drive of the Rice game, Texas turned it over on 4th and 2 on the 30-yard line or around there, right? So the defense can handle adversity. Can the offense handle adversity? They got to start fast.
Well, we've been talking to Joey Hickey of Roll Tide Wire. You can follow of Longhornswire. That's our brand of your site. I'm sorry, of Longhornswire. And you can follow him at jhickey24. You may know my friend AJ Spur. He writes for Roll Tide Wire. He's a good dude. But throughout the week, I've been kind of waffling. It's a 7-point line, and I put up a poll on my Twitter of people, and golly, 85% said Alabama minus the 7. I think that's way too high a percentage. I've been feeling 24-20 Alabama. What's been your feel on how it's going to play out how it's going to play out on Saturday?
Yeah, again, it all comes down to that first quarter, man. If Alabama starts off fast, if they win the first quarter, I'm not saying it's game over, but it could be a blowout and Texas could be walking out of there with their heads down. If Texas starts off fast, I think they have the defense to hold on to a lead. And so they finally have that group that can, let's get that first quarter down, get that script down, build that lead, and just hold it. And they have the defensive line to hold it. So my prediction was 31-27. I'm going to stick with it even after the Rice game. I'm kind of scared about it, but
Texas's way or Alabama's way?
Texas. I think they start off fast. I think Alabama's going to come back. They're going to fight back, but I think Texas barely holds on.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. I really cannot wait on Saturday. One more question for you about kind of the general picture on Texas. Lots of people went into the season from the Alabama side saying, "Ooh, Sark's on the hot seat. If they have a 7-5 season, if they lose a bowl game, those Texas fans, they got no patience. Blah 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 blah. They'll fire him." And I thought, no, Sark's building. They're recruiting. They're doing well. Everything's kind of on it's not as quick a trajectory as the Texas fans would like, but, it's still growing and building. Is Sark really on the hot seat? Where is his security level in Austin?
I mean, he's got a 6-year contract, so he's on year 3. So going to be hard to fire him. I think as long as he can continue with recruiting success, he'll be staying at Texas. Once recruiting goes down, kind of like with Tom Herman, you lose recruiting, you're done, because that's the lifeblood of a program. You got to have that. But you have to start winning these games. You have to start winning big games. It's a nice story last year when they had a close game with Alabama, but you have to start winning them at some point. And so I think that this is the year where the heat starts to turn up.
How good is Xavier Worthy? I mean, he's the number one receiver on Texas, but he's only, 5'10", 5'11", 175 pounds. He's a speedster. Many people see that height and weight, and they're like, Kool-Aid, Terry on, they'll take care of him. How good is Xavier Worthy?
I have never seen a wide receiver get wide open within 2 yards as easily as he can do. I mean, his get-off move just wins consistently. I think the only one who can kind of slow him down is Quinn Ewers and Steve Sarkisian and the offensive line. Like, only Texas can slow down Xavier Worthy.
I love that. I got two more for you, and we've been talking to Joey Hickey from LonghornsWire.usatoday.com. And look, everybody was all following the recruiting of Arch Manning. A lot of people were, he's coming to Bama. Oh, he's going to Georgia. But he ultimately ended up going to Texas. And then all the Bama fans said, we never wanted him anyways. That's the silly pivot. What's been the latest on Arch Manning? I've heard he's picked up some things. What's your opinion of Arch? Obviously, he's probably sitting there at 3 or 4 on the depth chart. Just kind of what's been the general Texas perception of Arch and his progression so far?
Well, he really struggled in spring. I think that's pretty well documented. I think it was a little bit overblown, but yeah, you go from 2A Louisiana football to now we're playing college football against a bunch of 5-stars in practice. Like, that's a whole lot different than, what he was doing. In the fall, he's really came on. In fall camp, I guess it's not fall, but in camp, he really, really, really made a push to where it's basically 2A and 2B with Malik Murphy and him. And by the end of the season, I think you could see him solidly in that number 2 spot. But he's really come along.
Well, last one for me is about Brett Yormark. Brett Yormark at Big 12 Media Days basically made a lot of stink with Texas and Oklahoma fans, encouraging his member universities or his future member universities to beat Texas and Oklahoma on their way out of the conference. What's been the Longhorn reaction, and then kind of how did they digest the commissioner kind of urinating on them on their way out a little bit?
Yeah, we don't love that, especially considering some of the poorly officiated games. I mean, you hate to blame officials, but when Texas is flagged for 11 penalties and Oklahoma State has 0, all of a sudden Mike Gundy's team is disciplined. I don't know about that, right? So obviously that kind of indicates that, hey, if I'm an official, do I want to fall in line or do I want to have integrity? That raises questions. So we don't love that. That's kind of where the frustration is, more so than with, oh, Brett Yormark favors Texas Tech. Of course he does, but don't say it out loud.
Well, Joey, anything that I'm missing about the Texas Longhorns, anything that I'm missing about this matchup that you want to tell the people, hey, look out for this, look out for that. You guys need to be prepared for Sark to do this wild and crazy thing, or anything that you want to just kind of say about the game that I've left off the table?
Yeah, I've already mentioned it, but those three defensive tackles, Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, Alfred Collins, I think, Alabama tackles are as good as it gets. It's the interior offensive line where you can attack, and that's where Texas is kind of at its strength defensively. So I think they could have some success and make this a defensive battle.
Well, we'll have to see. I do kind of think it's going to be a very close game. I'm sticking with my 24-20 Alabama. Joey Hickey giving us 31-27 Texas. So it's going to be a lot of fun for any of the gamblers out there. Either way is still Texas +7. So I think that's still where I'm feeling. We had Kirk Boles predicted a Texas win. I don't remember what his score was. That Texas +7 is looking like easy money to me. We'll have to see kind of how that plays out on Saturday. Joey, thank you so much for your time. Go read him at longhornswire.usatoday.com. Follow him on the X machine at jhickey24. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. No problem. That's Joey Hickey joining us on the program, and we'll be back with more of the Joe Gaither Show right after this. Whoa, we are back live right here on the Joe Gaither Show, right here on BamaCentral, and we appreciate Joey Hickey joining us. We actually recorded that last night. We had a quick wardrobe change, and we are back live on a Friday. I'm Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer today, probably because I'm so nervous about this weekend's game. We're going to have a little Football Friday fun and welcome in the BamaCentral staff to close out the rest of this day. We're going to welcome in first Wyatt Fulton. You guys can follow him at FultonW_, one of our great writers on BamaCentral.com, covering all things Alabama, really helping us with the NFL coverage. So looking forward to bringing Wyatt in on the program. I see more people jumping in backstage, so we're going to get ready to roll. Okay. Wyatt's with us. We see our lady Katie Wyndham, the lead writer right there for BamaCentral. You can follow her at Katie Wyndham_. Chris Walsh is getting set up and going. So we're going to have a lot of fun on a Friday. First off, we were just out at the Quad. Talking to ESPN's College Game Days personnel, Roman Harper, Tim Tebow, Kirk Herbstreit, and Prince Charming, Reese Davis. And Wyatt, you stuck around to listen to Pat McAfee. Little breaking news, Nick Saban's going to be joining Pat McAfee on Thursdays. What did the king of college football say with maybe the joker of the College Football Game Day?
Yeah, well, Saban seemed to actually really enjoy. I don't know if he necessarily seems to enjoy things, but it seemed like he enjoyed his time on McAfee today. First off, he came out crediting the fans, saying that they've got a great tradition and that the atmosphere is always good and the stadium's fantastic, showing some love to the fans right there. They talked about Jalen Milroe a little bit, said that they wanted to get back to running the football a little bit more as well. And then that people have adapted to the spread offense, but there are still good things about it, such as RPOs and advantage throws and things like that.
And then what did he say? I mean, he said that he's joining Pat McAfee every Thursday. How is he going to fit that into his schedule?
They did not hit on that. They did obviously make the announcement that Coach Saban's going to be on the show, but he's got a packed Thursday. He's going to be joining Pat McAfee on Thursday, I guess, during the midday, and then he's got his head coach at night at Baumhauer's.
And we listened to Hey Coach last night right there for BamaCentral.com. If anybody missed that, they can check out all the highlights right there at BamaCentral.com. Myself, Katie Wyndham, Austin, we're all going to be checking off Hey Coach each and every Thursday. Big hello and what's up to Austin Hannon jumping in and joining us. You can follow him on the X machine at Austin Hannon_. And of course, the big boss dog, Chris Walsh, is joining us as well. Follow him at Writing Walsh as he keeps all of the monkeys in order. How we doing today, guys? Chris, you doing good?
Dog, ringmaster, monkeys.
Oh, it's all nickname, trying to do it's Football Friday. We're trying to have fun. It's a big weekend.
Nah, just come on. I'm good, and it's really great to see everyone here, and these last week's show was really, really good, and so congratulations on that. So I'm glad that you guys actually want me to be here. So
Well, I took a straw poll and I asked everybody if they wanted you to be there, but then I got the results and I threw it in the trash. I want you to be here, and so that's all that matters. Austin, how's the day going? You recovered from our little adventure on the quad. What was your favorite part of talking to the four guys, the four faces of College Game Day?
Yeah, they seem excited for the game, which I think everybody kind of is, right? But to hear Tim Tebow, which, like you said earlier, go check out the site. We put a story out about that earlier too. To hear Tim Tebow talk about Jalen Milroe the way he did, I thought was really good. Obviously, he has a lot of experience in this conference. He won a Heisman Trophy, won 2 national championships, one as secondary backup, and one as the starting quarterback, of course, and was on his way to a third before Nick Saban in Alabama kind of took that away from him in Atlanta, and kind of really effectively ended what was Florida's dynasty, and they really haven't gotten back since. So, it was interesting to hear him talk about Milroe, but kind of what everybody else has been saying, he's got to do it again on Saturday, right? So that's the message right now for Jalen Milroe is go out there and play on Saturday like you did last week, and I think he's going to have that quarterback competition put to bed.
I believe so, and we're going to have a lot of fun covering the game on BamaCentral.com. Right now on BamaCentral.com, Katie Wyndham put out a very vast piece about Alabama and its reach globally. Go check it out right now. You can read about Alabama getting into Australia, getting into Germany, getting all over the place, down into Mexico. Katie, give everybody the quick highlights. Don't give away all the juice, but give everybody the quick highlights about the gist of your story that written on BamaCentral.com this morning.
I think for me, the biggest thing in writing this story, and kind of especially what's transpired over the last couple of weeks, is we can get into the real monotony, mundane of Nick Saban press conferences, asking him a question, covering games. But for some of these people that are coming in from around the world, from Mexico or across the pond in the UK, the chance to ask Nick Saban a question is they get goosebumps thinking about it, or it's a dream come true. That's just a regular Monday for us. But it's something that in these countries that are pretty soccer dominant, the other football, there is kind of a growing fan base for American football all over the world. And with Alabama being, one of the most successful teams over the last decade and a half, of course, there's Alabama fans all over the world. And so it was pretty cool to get to talk to Oscar from Mexico and George, who has a podcast with 3 other guys in the UK where they talk about college football. And one of my favorite little anecdotes in there is George got to be at SEC Media Days this year in Nashville, and he was sitting up front, and somebody came up to him and said, "Are you George?" And he said, "Yes." And he was worried he's about to get kicked out, that they recognized him as an imposter, even though he was there legitimately, did have a credential. But he was brought back to talk to Commissioner Greg Sankey, and Sankey said, "You sound just like you do on the podcast." And so this guy over in England has the ear of the SEC commissioner, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, go check out the story.
Right there on BamaCentral.com. Katie Wyndham doing a deep dive on the international reach of Alabama football and the SEC. But we're all here for a big game tomorrow. Alabama playing Texas. College Game Day is in town. Alabama 7-point favorite. We'll see what happens between the offensive and defensive lines. Wyatt, I'll start with you real quick. We got the Rice defense got after the Texas offense, and people have been debating, Texas was holding things back. They weren't showing their true colors, XYZ and ABC. Do you think Rice getting after the Texas offensive line is indicative of what will happen tomorrow, or will Steve Sarkisian be able to protect Quinn Ewers, giving him a chance to connect with Xavier Worthy?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a little bit shocking that Rice was able to get after Quinn Ewers like that. But we know obviously Sark's one of the best minds in football, and Kirk Herbstreit mentioned it in the press conference earlier today. That was part of it. Sark trying to hide things and hold back, or was there really offensive line troubles at Texas? I think Sark's going to do a really good job. He's great at getting his quarterback to get the ball out fast. So Alabama's defensive line and pass rush, they're going to have their work cut out for them, obviously, being a Power 5 offensive line. But I think they'll be able to get a hold of Ewers, and but Sark will get the ball out quick. He's good at that, I will say.
And Chris Walsh, you got a big old, you've got a nice experienced level. Do you think that what do you think that the merit is of holding back concepts? We heard Kirk Herbstreit this past week say that no way, Jose. Joe Klatt on the Texas broadcast said no, they're not holding anything back. Is there merit to the idea that they weren't showing all their cards against Rice?
Okay, number one, I'm not going to take exception that you just called me old.
Experience, season.
Even if I am. But yes and no. I mean, to me, there's a big difference between holding back scheme and holding back plays and wrinkles. And you can't hold back scheme. I mean, you are what you are, and you got to get ready kind of thing. So in the broader picture, Alabama's going to have a decent feel for what Texas wants to do, but it already had a good feel for what Texas wants to do because, I mean, like Sark knows Alabama, but Alabama knows Sark. And so it works both ways. And they played them last year, and they know half the players and coaches, it seems like. I swear. It's like little Crimson Tide, West, if you will, almost kind of thing. But for wrinkles, yes, absolutely. That's where you're going to see the difference. I mean, you might see a little bit of different personnel, different key situations, and that's where the gamesmanship all kind of comes into play. And I mean, look, Sark's really good coach, really good play caller. I'm sure they're going to have some different stuff, different things dialed up for them. One thing that we've seen Alabama have trouble with before with the initial adjustments because it shifts emotions. Teams come out with stuff that they hadn't done before, but that's in that same scheme. So that's where we're going to see Texas try to get Alabama on its heels defensively. And if the Longhorns struggle early in the game, that's huge for Alabama because I think in the long run, Alabama has a better running game. They have an offensive line that can pound on you and wear you down. So Texas is going to need to come out playing sharp right off the bat.
Katie Wyndham, what did you see last week with Alabama's defense against MTSU? And how do you feel about Alabama's defense going up against Sarkisian and those great skill position players this week? The competition much higher. Xavier Worthy, much better than anybody else that MTSU had on the field. I like Terry Arnold. I like Kool-Aid McKinstry. How do you feel like this defense is going to be how do they think they're going to play against Texas?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting looking back at how they played last year. And I mean, you look at the final scores, 20-19. So obviously not a high scoring game, didn't give up a lot of points. But I kind of, when I was looking into the stats from last year, the defense, I think, was responsible for 11 of the 15 penalties, which is part of that undisciplined play. Sure, it was part of that. You're not going to get the most favorable whistle on the road. Probably some of that too. Some of it was just being on the road early in the season and not being used to stuff. And so Alabama penalties on defense helped Texas out a lot on offense last year. And we saw, game one this year, they were a lot more disciplined in that area. In that sense, in the category of penalties, it doesn't really necessarily matter who you're playing or the skill of the opponent. Some of those penalties come down to self-discipline. And so it was a good start for Alabama in that area. And I think that's going to be important again on Saturday on defense. But overall, I mean, I liked what I saw from the Alabama defense. I think we heard them talk about this offseason, wanting to play to a certain standard, get back to a certain standard. I think we saw a little bit more of that aggressiveness. But like you said, it's not the same quality of opponent that we'll see with Alabama this week. And that's a good point. It will not be as hot this year either. That was one of the first things that all the players mentioned this year when talking about what they remembered from last year was the heat. And it being a night game, plus the temperature is actually supposed to be somewhat pleasant for what it's been around here lately, that should help too. There should be less fatigue. And so I believe it was in the Texas game last year when some of the other DBs struggled and Terrion Arnold kind of stepped up. And so he's matured this offseason, I think, both on and off the field. And so I think Alabama's DBs is, maybe one of their most experienced groups. And you also have, Caleb Downs starting as a freshman. But I think this is a linebacker core that's showed a lot of good things last week. And if Texas is struggling along the O-line, I'm kind of like Chris said, there are certain things, of course, these teams had hidden on offense, but if your offensive line can't block against, a lower quality opponent, that the Alabama defense is going to be bigger, faster, stronger. And so, but Texas has a lot of really fast skill players. And so it's going to be a good matchup for sure.
Austin, Katie brings up the penalties, and I have 6 of the 15 penalties were procedural variety, both on the offense and defense, offsides, false start, illegal formations. What do you think the impact is going to be? Nick Saban's brought up, okay, we want to have the crowd be in it from the very beginning. Kirk Herbstreit today talked about, Alabama crowd against LSU on big plays. He called it an A. But Alabama crowd against Mississippi State or someone else, he called it C+ at best. Do you think the Alabama fan base will be able to embrace, not be reactionary to, touchdown, we cheer, sack, we cheer, but instead be proactive and be involved in the game right from the very beginning?
Yeah, I think they will. I think it'll be a great crowd tomorrow. Me and Katie were actually talking about it the other day. Surprisingly enough, ticket prices have actually gone down since earlier in the summer when they were up in the $350 range for standing room. Now they're down to below $200, which I don't necessarily think is an issue. I still think that the stadium's going to be full and way more full than it was last week. But like you said, it's going to have a big impact on the game. I think that's a big reason that Alabama's favored by as many points as they are. I think if this was a neutral site game, you're probably going to look at an Alabama -3, 3.5, but usually the odds makers will give the home team about a 3 or 4 point swing just because of noise alone and what it can create for opponents. So Texas had a great crowd last year, one of the better crowds I've experienced during covering, sporting events. Really jacked up crowd. It had a lot of impact on Alabama, like you said. And so can Alabama's fans do the exact same thing this year? I think they will to a certain extent, but Texas has an experienced quarterback. They've got experienced players on both sides of the ball. And just like Alabama does, I think that is more of a immature, maybe younger players get into more trouble with that. But they once again, they haven't played at Bryant Denny Stadium. None of those players on the Texas team. So they're going to have to adjust. And I think by a certain point in the game, they'll kind of have it figured out. And it won't be as big of a problem as maybe you might think.
Wyatt Fulton, Nick Saban had talked and complimented the Texas front, the front 4, really, their interior defensive linemen. Alabama averaged, 4.1, 4.2 yards per carry running the ball against MTSU. Obviously, a huge step up in competition. What's your thoughts on the Alabama offensive line being able to open up holes and really keep Alabama on schedule? I think that's going to be very important for Jalen Milroe, not putting him in 3rd and longs, keeping him in 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4, or 3, preferably. How do you think the Alabama offensive line going into the second game together will be able to deal with probably the best front that they'll play all year?
Yeah, I think the offensive line was my X factor for this game on both sides of the ball. And I think Alabama's offensive line, they're a very experienced unit. I say experienced, but like Katie said, the secondary is experienced too. And yet we've got a true freshman starting at left tackle. So, but I think they're a good unit. I think they'll mesh well together. And I think they're really good at run blocking. Middle Tennessee State was stacking the box. They were prepared to stop the run last week. Now Texas may be doing the same thing, but at the same time, your quality is improving as well. These guys are getting they had a whole another week to mesh together and to get experience playing beside each other, playing with Milroe in the backfield. So I think their experience level, they'll continue to mesh, and they might struggle early on just as the energy and the nerves are in there. But as they settle into the game, I think the offensive line will be much better.
All right, so we're going to hit keys to the game. Every single one of you will give a key to the game. We'll start with Chris Walsh. What do you think the main key for Alabama to walk away with a victory on Saturday night will be?
I don't want to pick like one of the things that we can say every single game,
The low-hanging fruit.
I'm going to go with something specific. I think if Alabama is able to run for more than 150 yards, there's no way Texas wins this game. So I'm going to give a specific stat there. And then it's just, obviously they got to avoid turnovers. If Alabama can avoid making big mistakes, it's just going to work in their favor. So I think they can be even a little bit more conservative than they want. I mean, granted, they're going to mix it up. They're going to try to spread that defense out, but they're going to, I think the heart of this attack today or tomorrow against Texas, pounding the ball.
Katie Wyndham, what's your main key to the game tomorrow?
I like both those from Chris. I was going to say, I think if Alabama forces 2 turnovers again this week, like they did last week, I think they'll win, especially if on the adverse they don't turn it over again. If Jalen Milroe doesn't turn the ball over, I think that'll be big for Alabama or anyone on offense, because we've seen the last couple of years, Alabama's running backs have trouble holding on to the ball when that really wasn't a problem for most the Nick Saban era. So I think it's that. And then another, this is kind of low hanging fruit in Nick Saban classic is limiting those explosive plays. Texas does have the receivers that can, blow the top off the defense and have the big play. And I think that's going to be important for momentum, for keeping the crowd in the game, not letting those type of things happen. Because like Austin said, he thinks the crowd's going to show up, which I think they will too. But I'm going to have to see it to believe it, because this Alabama crowd has gotten super reactionary. They just expect Alabama to win. They may not be up and yelling the whole time. And so I think limiting explosive plays are also going to be a big thing on Saturday.
I kind of think that you're exactly right, that the Alabama crowd will get in there and say, you better show it. Give me a reason to cheer rather than just cheering for the sake of cheering. Austin Hannon, what do you think is your keys to the game for Alabama to walk away with a win on Saturday?
Yeah, there's one player on Texas' team last year that isn't back on this year's team. That's Bijan Robinson. And they used him very effectively in that game last year. And obviously he was probably the best running back in the country. And that's why he was a top 10 draft pick and everything like that. They don't have him anymore, and their starting running back now is a true freshman. And so they want to throw the ball. And so last week, obviously, Alabama's secondary looked strong against an air raid team. But you know who Steve Sarkisian is. You know who Quinn Ewers is. They want to come out and throw the ball. They've got Xavier Worthy. They've got A.D. Mitchell. They've got great receivers. And so can this secondary prove that it's better this year? I mean, we saw the secondary fail Alabama a couple times last year, including in Knoxville. Against a team that wants to throw the ball around. And that's another thing that's going to happen here. Quinn Ewers was great when he was in the game last year before Dallas Turner hurt him in the first quarter. He could really do no wrong. And so if he's able to do that again, I think Texas fans' chances are a lot higher this year around even than last year, because Bryce Young's not on the other sideline. Now, that's not any disrespect to Jalen Milroe. He played great last week, and he may play great tomorrow. But if you can't stop the other team, then you're going to have trouble. So it's going to come down to the secondary. If they can limit Quinn Ewers to under 300 yards, I think they'll feel good about themselves. Like Katie said, if they can force a couple turnovers within that passing game, that'll help even more. And on offense, going along with Jalen Milroe, I think Chris and Katie already talked about it. You got to protect the football. I mean, that is the number one way to give away a football game, especially of this magnitude when teams are going to be so on edge and there's so much anxiety and pressure. If you turn the ball over, you're giving free points to the other team. You're giving free field position. So if you can not let that happen, no turnovers, run your offense efficiently, and protect the secondary and knock some passes away, I think Alabama should feel good about their chances.
Coach Saban on Hey Coach last night equating a turnover to 3.5 points on the scoreboard. Said every time you turn the ball over, it's basically like giving up 3.5 points. So I loved his analytical approach. Wyatt Fulton, Coach Fulton, what's your key to the game tomorrow?
Key to the game is going to be penalties, really and truly. Last year in Texas, Alabama had, I think, 15 penalties for 100 penalty yards. So very oftentimes, team will rush for a first down. You're hyped. You're in field goal range. A holding penalty. Now you're third and 15, third and 20, and now you're being put in a one-dimensional offense situation and things like that. Defensively, you get a massive stop on third down. Face mask, roughing the passer, something like that. Okay, well, now the offense has been allowed to move up and gets a fresh set of downs. So being able to get off the field or stay on the field, depending on if you're looking at the offense or the defense, is going to be huge.
I love all your keys. I'm going to expound on that with going. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
One thing real quick, and I want to comment. Wendell's comment was really good there that came up. I really want to see how Ewers is going to react the first time an Alabama pass rusher gets in his face, especially because of what happened last year. So I would not be surprised if Alabama goes after him really quickly to try to get him out of rhythm from the get-go with bring a surprise blitz, maybe right on. And granted, they might give up a big game right off the bat, but if you can disrupt them from the start, changes everything. And awesome.
Yeah, go for it.
We talked about the crowd a little bit. If there's one thing that football fans like, home crowds like, that's getting after the quarterback. So I was actually just about to hit what Chris was talking about. And early on, often, I think Kevin Steele did it really well last week, disguising blitzes and really sending pressure when maybe they weren't expecting it. That's something he's done really his whole career. And I think that Alabama fans are very relieved to see that their defensive coordinator that's in there is not afraid to send guys like Chris Braswell and Dallas Turner at the quarterback.
I think a huge key is going to be receivers catching the football. All through fall camp, it was, we're struggling with drops. We're struggling with drops. But last week, they really did not. There was only once or twice the ball hit the ground when Milroe was out there. One was an underthrow down deep, and then one was into the sidelines. But every time the ball was in the vicinity of a receiver, our receivers were coming down with the catch and keeping the Alabama offense on schedule. I think that's going to have to continue on Saturday. Let's throw Malachi Moore and Jalen Key's health out there. Obviously, they left the game early against MTSU last week. They did not practice on Monday. Coach Saban said on Wednesday that they were practicing again. Last night, he said that they were limited. They were practicing. They're going to be game time decisions. Kenny Wyndham, we've talked about Xavier Worthy and their passing game. How important is Malachi Moore and Jalen Key?
I mean, they are important. Obviously, they're guys that were towards the top of the depth chart to open the season, but at Alabama, they talk about all the time, it's that next man up mentality. Alabama has the talent and depth at most positions, including defensive back. So it's not ideal to be down to those guys. Key is the defensive back that did force the turnover last week. Multiple of us have talked about turnovers, and he was able to snag one last week. And so it's not ideal for Alabama. Also, based on what Saban said, I wouldn't be surprised if Key does end up playing on Saturday. And so it's not the end of the world. If Alabama starts to develop more and more injuries at defensive back, I think when Kool-Aid, looked like when he got hit on the punt last week, it looked like he may have been in concussion protocol or whatever. If he goes down too, and you're also missing Key and Moore, you're starting to get a little concerned. But I think for right now, it's going to be okay. Now, one thing that is interesting, though, when we're talking about crowd noise is a lot of times, defenses say it's tougher when we're at home because that's when the crowd's yelling, and communication in the secondary, the players have talked about how important that is. So if there are new guys out there, will that communication be the same, especially if the Alabama crowd is loud?
Coach Saban last night, actually Holly Rowe reporting at practice yesterday, they were running crowd noise at 102 decibels when the first defense was out there. And Coach said, yeah, we got to get them to communicate with hand signals because we hope that Alabama's crowd is going to be really, really strong. What do you think, Austin, about one thing that surprised me in last week's game was Justice Haynes was the fourth running back out there on the field. You saw Jam Miller be the third running back, and obviously you default to experience. But Coach Saban has been very complimentary every time Justice Haynes' name has come up throughout spring, summer, and fall. Do you think we'll see a little more Justice Haynes on Saturday night?
I hope so. From a personal standpoint, I think he's going to be one of the better running backs that we've seen come out here in recent years. And that was one of my takeaways last week was why wasn't he on the field more? I mean, we'd heard about the injury a couple weeks ago, and maybe that played a little bit of a part in it. It was Middle Tennessee. Maybe they didn't want to put him out there too much, and maybe that was because they were getting him ready, geared up for this game. So whatever they do with the running backs, I think that Saban's got that under control. Obviously, Jason McClellan and Roydell Williams are great options in the backfield, and they're going to get you your 4 or 5 yards of carry that you're really looking for. And I think that they kind of can do things that Justice can't, and that's run up the middle. I mean, they can really make you pay. There's two strong guys that can really, on short down situations, get you first downs when you need it. Jalen Milroe brings to the game is that we saw a quarterback sneak last week on 4th down and 1. When's the last time Alabama ran a quarterback sneak? I don't think we saw it with Bryce Young ever. I don't think we ever really saw it with Tua. Obviously, Mac Jones wasn't really doing it. So if they can really, I talked about Tim Tebow earlier, but if they can create some packages like that for Milroe on 3rd and 4th and short, where they can run quarterback power to the right or left behind that big offensive line, that gives you another thing that they can do in short yard situations. So I would like to see Justice Haynes more on Saturday, but I think that's up to the coaching staff, and I'll see how they handle that.
Chris Walsh, I'll throw you the question from my old music teacher. If you are running the first series trying to get Jalen Milroe into rhythm, what kind of packages or what kind of offensive schemes are you trying to give to Jalen Milroe so that he starts the game off confidently?
There's, one of the things that you may want to do is just because of the atmosphere and you want to get him in a rhythm is come out throwing. I think that's a temptation. The game within the game, one thing I think we're going to have to, be keeping a close eye on, and I think it's going to be very interesting. If I'm Texas, I'm going to try to challenge Alabama's running backs in pass protection, which is, I think that could be, one of the things that, it's the guys that they have, it's either not a strength or they're really young. And it's, is Milroe going to be able to pick up the blitzer kind of thing? Now, the danger of doing that is if you send a blitzer on one side, he's just going to take off on the other side. So the containment is going to be, absolutely key for that. But, trying to get him into a rhythm, get his confidence going is going to be important. But, there's a couple different ways that he can do it. And I think in this case, maybe I'm wrong, but if I'm Alabama, I think I'm going to try to get him going in the offense just in general, maybe moving the ball, running more than passing, even though the idea is to get him going in the pass game. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I want to get his confidence up as fast as I can and as early as I can. So I'm gonna do something where I do some sort of a rollout or something where he's gonna have an option run right off the bat, maybe like second down. And once you get a little bit of rhythm, I'm gonna attack deep. I'm gonna take a shot early on, because if you can get Texas really early on, it could be huge for Alabama. And like I said before, the more the game goes on, the more they're going to want to run the ball. So I kind of talked my way through this. Yeah, I'm coming out throwing.
Wyatt, were you surprised last week that Jalen Milroe, though not a whole lot of designed quarterback runs, obviously the first touchdown was a rushing touchdown, but it was a broken play. Were you surprised that Alabama didn't utilize too many outside of Austin the snake, which I love seeing a couple sneaks, but real traditional read option, quarterback run, quarterback power, really getting Jalen Milroe going in the running game in designed fashion?
I wasn't overly shocked. I think that might be one of those wrinkles that Chris had mentioned that we're maybe kind of hiding. I won't say hiding away, but maybe not showing our hand with Texas coming to town this coming week. But I wasn't overly surprised. I think the big thing was getting Jalen Milroe confidence in the passing game early in that game as well, and it seemed to work. Alabama obviously rolled last week, so.
Well, we're right at an hour, and I appreciate everybody jumping in and joining us today. We've been talking to the BamaCentral staff, Chris Walsh, Katie Wyndham, Austin Hannon, and Wyatt Fulton. You can follow us at BamaCentral on the social media machines. Make sure you're reading all the great work at BamaCentral.com. Katie Wyndham, the line is 7. Last week, all right, you and Austin got me. You and Austin both took Bama minus the 39.5, and I thought, oh, no way. But y'all win. Y'all got me. Y'all are 1-0. Wyatt and Chris will play this week, try to get on the scoreboard. I'm 0-1. Give me your kind of general thoughts on the game. Wrap it up in a big old bow and tell us, will Alabama cover the 7-point spread? If you want to throw a score in there as well, that's A-okay, but the floor is yours.
I don't normally like being on the record with an exact score prediction, but me and Austin our last just a minute of this week on Thursday, will this be another close game like last year's? And I was more in the camp that it won't. I don't think it'll be a blowout for either team. But I do think Alabama will cover. I won't be surprised if it's a 2-score game compared to the coming down to the wire last play. Would that completely shock me? No, but I think that there's a couple of factors, working in Alabama's favor. I think this is a team that is motivated. I think there are more things in the playbook that they can open up, and I think it being at home, I think it not being as hot will all work in Alabama's advantage, and so I do think Alabama will cover the spread tomorrow.
Alabama minus 7 for Katie. She's taking her $100. She's going to double up. Wyatt Fulton, your hypothetical $100 and your final thoughts on the game.
My final big key is going to be offensive and defensive line on both sides. If Milroe's able to stand in the pocket, get the throws that he's looking at, I think Alabama will be really well. Chris had mentioned Bradley Quinn Ewers. If Bama can hit him a couple of times early, then he may be moved off his spot. But I think I'm gonna go with Katie. Take Alabama minus 7 here. I think this is a game that Alabama's going to wake up for. I think this is a game that the crowd will be active for, and I think you're looking at a 9 to 12 point Alabama win here.
Ooh, we love it. We love it. 2 on the Alabama side. Austin, you going to make it 3?
Unfortunately not. I just think this is not a knock on Alabama. I think Texas is just as good as advertised. I think they're going to be ready to go on Saturday. They've been thinking about that game last year in Austin for 365 days now. It's just another year under Steve Sarkisian that they've improved. They have the quarterback that they wanted to have last year before he got hurt. And assuming he doesn't get hurt again and we see Arch Manning in the game, I think Texas keeps it close the whole way. I think it's a 1-score game just about the entire way. I think it might be a back-and-forth occasion. There's only been a few teams, though, that have come into Bryant-Denny Stadium since Nick Saban's been here and won And it's been really generational teams, usually with Heisman winning quarterbacks. And I don't think Texas is that level, so I'm not going to jump too far. But I do think Texas keeps the game close. I think they keep it within one score. And I think it comes down to the wire and who can get a stop, who can get a score towards the end of the game. I'm going to go Alabama 28, Texas 24.
I love it. We're going to have a fun game on Saturday night. Dr. Chris Walsh, let us know. Are you taking the Tide? Are you taking Texas?
I find it kind of ironic that Tim Tebow is here this weekend because in many ways, this game reminds me a little bit of when Florida was here right before Saban. And so what year was that? 2005? Mm-hmm. I think that's right. The Pro Throw game basically is what it boils down to.
That was 05.
And the crowd in that game was probably the loudest I've ever heard it at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Just everyone was so fired up for that game. I think this crowd might be huge. If it's like that day, and I think it might. And the big reason why I say that is because all I've been hearing year in, year out is, Alabama doesn't play enough big games at home. Well, here we go. And I think everyone's really fired up for this one. Even though Alabama beat Texas last year, even though, everyone's been hearing all off season that Alabama is no longer the same Alabama, I think the crowd's really going to be fired up. I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. I think the team's going to respond. I agree with Austin that Texas is really good, and I think they're going to be a handful. But I think in the long run, I think Alabama's going to win this game. I think it's going to be more than the 7 points, and I just think everyone's going to have a great time.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it, and I do think the crowd will respond and will answer the Nick Saban call. But I still am kind of with Katie, like I'll believe it when I see it. But my gut says they will. My gut says that it'll be kind of like that. For me, Chris, it was 09 against LSU. 09 against LSU. Julio going down the sidelines on the screen pass to break it open. That for me was the loudest I've ever heard Bryant-Denny say, and so I kind of feel like it'll be like that. Though I'm going to go with Austin. I think Texas will cover. Alabama wins, but Texas covers. It's going to be a blast. I'm going to go 24-20. I think it's going to be a defensive battle. The offensive lines, I think, both will kind of struggle to kind of keep the pressure away off their quarterback. But Alabama's ability to run the football will ultimately prevail. I'll go 24-20. Alabama wins. So we got Austin and myself on Texas +7, Wyatt, Katie, and Chris on Alabama -7. You'll have to follow us at BamaCentral.com for all our coverage tomorrow. Austin and Katie are going to be working their tails off from sun up to sundown. I'll be trying to play along as best we can with Chris. You guys want to follow them at Chris Wall, at Writing Walsh, at Katie Wyndham _, at Austin Hannon _, and at Fulton W _. We'll be at Bama Central on the X Machine and BamaCentral.com for all your comprehensive coverage. You guys will be able to find it all the way through the night, and we're going to be all over everything from whatever Sark says after he wins or loses to whatever Nick Saban says after he wins or loses. Maybe we'll get another Coke bottle crystal ball comment. That'll be fun. Maybe we'll get a funny comment. That'll be great. We will be back on Monday. Yes. SI Alabama. We are your Sports Illustrated home for Alabama. Oh, if you didn't see it, soccer got back on the winning streak yesterday. We didn't mention that on the program. That's the only thing active right now. Volleyball. We'll be keeping up with volleyball over the weekend, but obviously all our eyes will be on Alabama, Texas tomorrow night. For Chris Walsh, for Katie Wyndham, Wyatt Fulton, and Austin Hannon, I'm Joe Gaither. You guys are the viewers, the listeners. We appreciate you guys so much. Again, read all the great work at BamaCentral.com, and we'll be back on Monday for another episode of the Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.